Gives the government 16 weeks to come up with new legislation and pass it. But first, a parliamentary committee will have to get down to work. They're meeting Monday for the first time. The issue is now in the hands of the MPs and senators on that committee to try to find a way forward. And we're joined by some of them now. Conservative MP Michael Cooper and NDP MP Murray Rankin are both on that committee. They join us from Edmonton and Victoria, respectively. And in Toronto, we have Adam Vaughan, Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. Welcome to you all. Let's start first of all with what the court decided. 4 months instead of 6 months. Starting with you, Adam, it's not quite what you'd hoped for, but it's a little bit of time. Is this going to be enough for the government to do what they need to?
Well, it'll have to be, and I think that the individuals on the committee, both the senators and the parliamentarians, are going to have to get down to work very quickly. 4 months is the extension that's been given. It's roughly the length of the next session, and so the reporting out of that committee to government and getting the cabinet and the ministers responsible to get that legislation in front of Parliament and passed is now the work in front of us. So we respect the court's decision. They've had to make a very tough decision to balance some very difficult issues. They've given us an extension, and as parliamentarians, we now have to respect that and get down to work.
Right. Michael, your thoughts on this? You're on the committee that has to get this work done quite quickly. Are you concerned about how much time you have, or do you think that you can move quickly enough to get through all of this in 16 weeks? Less than that in the case of the committee, I suppose, because you've got to make your recommendations and then the laws have to be written, drafted, passed.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am pleased to see that the court did grant an extension. I would have preferred to have seen a 6-month extension, but an extension of any kind is better than no extension at all. In terms of the timeline, you're quite right. The committee has to prepare a final report by February 26. That is a very short period of time. I am concerned that the committee will be able to engage and consult as broadly as necessary, given the complexity of the matter, given the diverse range of views that are out there on this matter. And while it would have been compressed in any event, I think some of this does fall on the government. The fact is that this committee could have very easily been established in December, but for whatever reason, the government dragged its heels, and it's not until now mid-January, a month later, that we're just starting to do our important work.
Well, I want to give Murray a chance to get in here as well, because you're also on this committee. Your thoughts on this in terms of the timing?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with Michael. The Conservatives dragged the puck on this for an awful long time. We could have had this committee up and running. Now we're stuck with it. I agree with Adam. We've got to get on with it. We'll do our best to achieve what the Supreme Court has required us to do. I think 4 months is reasonable. It does keep our feet to the fire, but that's appropriate. This is a sensitive and difficult issue. What I do like about this case today is that it's giving individuals a constitutional exemption, the ability to go to a court in their province and ask for the relief which every Canadian has now under the Charter the right to have, namely physician-assisted dying and end-of-life decisions. That's what this case was about, and we've got to get on with it and do our job.
Adam, you know, that report due from the committee by the end of February, that really isn't very much time. Do you think there's any possibility that you might be willing to give the committee more time, or is it simply not an option given how quickly you're going to have to get to work on drafting legislation?
Well, the committee's been set up to do its work, and I'll let the committee report out as it sees fit. It knows the deadlines and knows the work in front of it. I think the good news here, if there is any, a lot of thought and work has already gone into this process. I mean, Quebec has had extensive consultations. You know, we've all been briefed on this because we did have, as Murray had said, we did have time before the last election to get up to speed on some of these issues. So, you know, it is a daunting task. It's going to take discipline and hard work, and I think I have confidence in my colleagues to get the work done. And I agree with the comments that the court has found a very careful way to balance individual needs and address individual suffering in between now and the 4-month deadline. And at the same time, it's found a way to make sure that all parliamentarians remain focused on the goal here, which is to get the right law in place so that suffering ends, but that vulnerable populations are protected. And forget being a parliamentarian, as a citizen, as a parent, as a son, as a brother. You know, we all have family members that have come through tough times. We have work to do, and I think it's time to look forward to that work and get the committee properly staffed and ready and up and running as quickly as possible on Monday, and hope that we can get a good consensus quickly.
If I could just add, we have an enormous amount of great work that Quebec did already. Quebec's done great work in their consultation process, and the voluminous record before the Supreme Court in Carter is also available to us, plus experience in other jurisdictions. It's not a case of starting with a blank slate. There's lots we can build upon.
Good points.
Michael, I want to ask you that this is a committee. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that in terms of Adam's comment, that he is quite right that there has been a considerable amount of work done on this matter, which is why it's curious that the government continues to stall and refuse to release the report of the expert panel that had been appointed by the previous Conservative government. That committee had delivered its work in the way of a final report to the government on December 15th. It's now a month later, and it still hasn't been released. The excuse given is that it's caught up in translation. I think after 1 month, it's time. I think that's be serious, really.
Well, it's a complex document.
Would you consider releasing it?
Well, it's a complex document. I think once the committee is constituted and has a chair and has a schedule and an agenda put forth, I think that information can be forwarded. I think the comment that's been made, though, is that a significant amount of research, a significant amount of deputation and consideration has been presented in very, sort of learned ways. And I think that once we get that committee up and running, I think, as we said, we have 4 months to get that work done. So rather than looking backwards and criticizing, I think the real opportunity here is to show Canadians that Parliament can work and can find common ground instead of just the battleground, especially when it comes to such important issues where people are suffering. And as I said, as a parliamentarian, as a citizen, I'm looking forward to the work that gets done.
Okay, in the last minute that we have left here, I just want to do a quick round robin with all three of you gentlemen and ask, this is not a clear partisan issue. It's not necessarily left-right. There's people on all different parts of the spectrum. How, as a committee and a government, are you going to work together on something that's a vitally important issue and not have this get caught up in partisan politics? Let's start with you, Murray.
I think you're totally right, Mercedes. This is nonpartisan. This is doing what Canadians want Parliament to do. And I'm wanting to hear from people from all perspectives on this issue. Vulnerable people, the provinces, the physicians, everyone. And I think we can do the job I think that Canadians expect us to do.
Okay, Michael?
I agree with Murray. This is a sensitive issue. There's a diverse range of opinions. There's a whole host of legal, moral, and ethical questions that underlie it. So what's important is that the committee proceed cautiously and consult widely.
Right.
Okay, last word to you, Adam.
Well, as I said, I think we have personal experience to draw on. I think we all have had, unfortunately, experience with loved ones who need better palliative care, which is part of the solution here. But we have to look to our better angels, and we have to look to the experience that is represented in the 338 members of the House of Commons. And as I said, find the common ground on this one, not the battleground. Okay. And I'm very confident.
We have to stop you there because we are hearing that Finance Minister Bill Morneau is speaking now in Alberta. So we're going to go to that live.